I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. And firstly, it's my privilege to acknowledge the traditional custodian of the lands here in Canberra, especially the Ngunnawal tribe, and also my respect to Her Royal Highness Princess Lafitani, who is the High Commissioner of Tonga for Australia. To all lineages here and also in Tonga and from different parts of the world who are watching and will be watching this program, welcome to the Lo'au University to its program this morning about ancient Tongan myths, ancient Tongan and world myths. So my guest this morning, or this afternoon rather, is Luseane Tuita-Nakao, Lafitani, and she's going to talk and dialogue with me. She will lead this program. She's going to talk about the creation myth of Tonga. Without further ado, I'll pass on to Luseane to start, and I will join it as we continue on. MALO, Luseane.
MALO, and thank you, Siwa, for that introduction. And I'm rather excited today because, why? Because we're talking about myths and legends. And we've all grown up in our homes, in our families, listening to stories. And some of these stories were called myths and legends. So we heard these stories from our parents, from our grandparents, especially our grandmothers. And so they're stories that have been handed down from a very long time ago. So now, myths and legends. Today we start with the Tongan creation myth. Now, the creation story worldwide or universally have differences, great differences, but they also have great similarities. And I think, like anything else, as we go through our myths and legends, maybe on a bi-weekly, we will see and we will bring to you the similarities of our myths and our legends to that of other countries in the world in the Pacific. So, now what happened in the beginning? Now we have the stories from the Bible. We have stories from other cultures in other countries. We have a Tongan story. Now, I've taken the story here, especially from the book, Noel Rutherford's book, Friendly Islands or History of Tonga. So I've taken a lot of the stuff from that book for us to talk about today. And before we go on, I was just thinking that, a lot of people have said, or a lot of people say, what's the point? What is the point of talking about myths and legends? We don't know whether they happened. They're not important. That's old stuff. That's old school. But a very clever man, a philosopher, an Italian philosopher named Giambattista Vico, he said myths and legends are very, very important. And why are they important? Is because they tell the stories of the time. So that's how we know what happened a very long time ago, because we have our myths and legends to refer to. So that is why they're important, because whatever we do on the day, we will have a story to reflect what we do. If I'm talking to someone next week and I refer to today, I will tell that person the story of what I did on Tuesday, the 11th or the 10th of October. So that's really important stuff. We just tell a story. That's what Vico thinks. Vico thinks it's important. Myths and legends only tell us or inform us of what happened in the past. So that's important. History. Anyway, how about we go back? We go back to Myths and Legends Tonga and Creation Myth Tonga. So, it says that in the beginning there was just the sea and the spirit world, and in between them was a rock. And this rock, special rock, was called Tauia Futuna. And I think a lot of you have heard of this and learned about this. So there, we've only got the sea, the spirit world, in between them was a rock, and this rock was called Tauia Futuna. Very similar to the stories in the Bible of the beginning. There was nothing. There was nothing, until God came in and started to create things. Our Tongan myths say there was just the spirit world and the sea and this rock named Tauia Futuna. Now, this rock, what happened? What's with this rock? Well, on this rock lived some people, and these are very important people. So on these people lived, I think, 1, 2, 4 sets of twins, male and female. So there was Piki and Kele, first set of twins. They're on this rock, Tauia Futuna. And then there was Atungaki and his sister Maimo Olongona, the second set of twins. Whanua Uta and his twin sister Whanua Vai. He Moana and his twin sister Lupe. Now these were the 4 sets of twins on Tauia Futuna. We'll go back to the names again because they're very important. Piki and Kele, Atungaki and Maimo Olongona, Whanua Uta and Whanua Vai, He Moana and his twin sister Lupe. So that's, this is interesting because you think, why twins? Why male and female? Well, I guess it is important for the story of creation to have, male and female, because that's how everything starts. Anyway, what happens in our creation myth is that these twins started to procreate. So we have Piki and Kele, the first set of twins. They have 2 children, Taufuri Whanua and a daughter named Havea Lolo Whanua. That's Piki and Kele. They decide to have children. Now we have the other set of twins, Atungaki and Maimoa Olongona. They had a daughter and they named her Velelahi. Then we have Whanua Uta and Whanua Vai, who decided to have a child. They had a daughter and they named her Velesi'i. So quite interesting, Siwa, as we travel on with our myth. How there's there was just the things like the sea and the spirit world and Pulotu, and between them Tauia Futuna. And then these interesting people living on that rock, these twins living on that rock, so when, as I said before, all these twins had children. I'll go through the children again. Piki and Kele had 2 children, a son, Taufuri Whanua, a daughter, Havea Lolo Whanua. Atungaki and Maimoa Olongona had a daughter, Velelahi. Whanua Uta and Whanua Vai had a daughter, Velesi'i. Now, all of you would remember there are songs, we have some of our traditional songs, classical songs, and they tell the stories and they talk about these people. Now, we have to think about, there's a very important, there's a son. Amongst all these children, there's one male, just one male, very important. Taufuri Whanua is a boy, is a male. Now, what happens is that the children of the children have children, So this is just a story of DNA, the story of creation, this is it, the beginning, Genesis, the start. Now, Taufuri Whanua, who is the son of Piki and Kele, and Havea, Lolo Whanua, they had a son. This son is named Hikuleo. Velelahi, the daughter of Atungaki and Maimoa Longona, also had a child with Taufuri Whanua, and that son was Tangaloa. Very important, these names. Now, Velesi'i, the daughter of Whanua Uta and Whanua Vai, also had a child with Taufuri Whanua. It was a son, and this boy's name was Maui. So we've heard all these names. Now we know where they come from, how they came onto this earth.
Some people, they say Hikuleo was a son, and some say that she was a daughter.
A female.
A female, that she was a female. So, but Taufuri Whanua Luseane appears there to be the main person.
Yes. So Taufuri Whanua is the son of Piki and Kele, And he had a child with his sister. So we're talking about brother-sister connections here, to have these children. And of course, when we think about it, they had to procreate, these people, because there was no one else in the world. I mean, this is it. These are the people who lived on the rock. There's no one else to procreate with, so they had to procreate, They had to partner up with themselves, brother, sister, so Piki and Kele, sister and brother. Atungaki and Maimoa Olongona, brother, sister. Whanua Ota and Whanua Tahi, Whanua Vai, brother, sister. He Moana and his sister, Lupe. So, and they all had, they had these children who turned around and had children again. So, Taufuri Whanua, as you said, Siwa, very important boy.
He was the main one.
Yes. He's the main, he's the
He's the man that produced the both of, all of them, of what we later on refer to as
the main gods.
Or goddess.
Yes.
And goddess. So Hikuleo, Habea Hikuleo.
The son of Taufuri Whanua and his sister. Yeah. So that's important.
Yeah.
Havea Lolo Whanua.
Havea Lolo Whanua. Yeah.
That's his mother.
And then Tangaloa later on was called Tangaloa Eiki. Tangaloa Langi, or the first Tangaloa. And then Maui later on called Maui Motua.
So what we can say is this child, this son of Velelahi and Taufuri Whanua, Tangaloa, would be our first Tangaloa. He would be Tangaloa Motua. And then we look at
Tangaloa Eiki, as they call Lucy.
Okay, Tangaloa Eiki then.
Tangaloa Eiki.
Pardon my
Tangaloa Langi for the Samoa.
Tangaloa Langi. So this is the first one, as I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now, Taufuri Whanua and Velesi'i, son, Maui, becomes or is known as Maui Motua.
Maui Motua, that's
right. That's the first Maui. So we're looking at the first Tangaloa, the first Maui. Of course, from these parents.
And the first Havea Hikuleo.
And Hikuleo, yes. So Havea Lolo Whanua and Taufuri Whanua's son, Hikuleo, is the first.
Most Tongan, most sources believe to be, at the end, believed to be a female.
I'm going by this book, Siwa. So I'm going by this book that I'm getting all this information from. And I think we can all say that, because everyone has a different story about who. Lots of scholars have different interpretations of who was who and who came first. But I think we all have the gist of, we all agree on this, that whoever there was this person who had this person, may he be God, may he be, demigod, male or female, like Havea Hikuleo. We know her as a her, from Pulotu. But in this book here, it says it's a he. So I guess as long as we know that there was a Hikuleo, maybe that Hikuleo, maybe he had a sister named Havea Hikuleo.
There are stories about Hikuleo as I said before, as a female, And there are stories that he appears as a male. But what we have come down to, that most of the story about her, in the case of Tonga, that she was, so we now refer to her as a goddess. And she was the fahu, the first fahu.
I'm wondering.
For the Tonga. But I would like, Lucy, before we come back to that, did you mention in that version that there was only ocean and Pulotu? Did they mention there Pulotu was exist?
Well, if you were listening, Siwa,
No,
in the beginning, the sea.
I'm
There
just
was-
asking you, because
the
I was
sea-
doing something else,
Okay, the sea, the spirit world, Pulotu, and between them, so either sea, Pulotu, and the rock.
Yeah.
So the spirit world is Pulotu, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the
That's
sea.
why I asked, because
Pulotu.
there are different versions. I just want to make sure that
Okay.
it comes out from
So-
the version. Yeah.
So what version? So what's the other version or another one? Instead of the sea, the spirit world, Pulotu,
So that's
and the
the
rock.
common one. That's the main one that because with myth we have to look for similarities and differences. We have to come to some common knowledge about myth. So that's the importance of us talking about this myth. But why it's interesting for me, Lucy, only Pulotu and the sea and the stone, Tauia o Futuna, nothing else. And it reflects also some other stories that Pulotu was the main island where things started. And it connects to the findings of archaeologists and anthropologists.
Well, I guess that's, I was just thinking.
Pulotu can be seen as Fiji and Melanesia and some islands because they were there first. It connects. Myths connects with some of the sites.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to.
And I guess what we're saying is that we haven't gotten to the, fishing up of the islands, which will be looking at, like your talk about Pulotu being Fiji. In the beginning here, we're still looking at the Pulotu as the spirit world. We haven't gone to the fishing up of all the islands by the Maui. So I guess in the beginning, before there was the land, there was just the spirit world. They're just calling that Pulotu, the spirit world at the moment. That's the beginning. So what would the other beginning be? What would the other beginning be?
The other two creation myths beginnings are, one is when the Maui, the story of the Maui fishing up the islands, is not complete.
Yeah.
It's not like it's like a later development.
Yeah,
of
that will be
creation.
later on to this. Hey.
Yeah, but they
See,
refer
this-
to that story as well as creation myth.
Yes,
It's
that is
of it.
part.
But the Maui, as you mentioned, they were later on came into being.
Yes.
That's why this myth you are talking about is the main myth. The other,
'Cause I'm just going from the-
other
yeah.
beginning, as you asked, the other beginning creation myth is the story about Kohai, Koau, Komomo, which is also can be later on because the Tangaloa created them. But I'll give it back to you, Lucy.
Okay. Yeah, because this is just, I see this as the beginning. The great beginning, because there's nothing else but this. The Maui story and the fishing story comes later, and this is how I like this beginning, Siwa, because it starts from nothing and then it starts to create, It has the people, the twins, Then they start to have their children. Then we come down to the main stories of the main children, like the son or the daughter, Hikuleo, who then takes over, the spirit world. And then we have Tangaloa, who then takes over the sky. And then we have Maui, who then takes over Lolofonua, or the underworld. So I like the way it chronologically has this, especially with the creation. So Hikuleo, Tangaloa and Maui then had the job of dividing creation. So they had between the three, Hikuleo took Pulotu, which is the spirit world, and we know Hikuleo to be female. So Tangaloa then took the sky, and then Maui then took the underworld. It's really, it's quite well set up, the way this story goes. Now, if we go back to Hemoana, to the twins, the original twins. Remember there was Hemoana and his twin sister Lupe? You remember there were 4 twins. Now, the 4th twin, Hemoana, was a sea snake.
That's right, yeah.
And Lupe was a dove.
Dove,
yes. And then these twins divided up the rest of creation, which was Hemoana took the sea and Lupe the land. So, and it doesn't say there, Siwa, that they had children. It just says that after the first, that they didn't have children, Hemoana and Lupe.
So we have, go back, Lucy, Piki and Kele.
Yes.
And then we'll go from there to, can you recite it? I'm just trying to follow.
Right. The original twins
Yeah.
on the rock, Piki and Kele.
And Kele, yeah.
First twins, Atungaki and Maimoa Longona. Second twins.
They came out from Piki and Kele.
No.
That's
I'm talking about there's 4 sets of twins on the rock.
Okay.
You've got the first twin,
Piki
the second
and Kele.
twin, Atungaki and his sister Maimoa Longona.
Okay.
The third set of twins, Fonua Uta and his sister Fonua Vai. The 4th twins, Hemoana and his twin sister Lupe. Those are the twins. Okay?
The 8 altogether.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
Then we go down to, they start to have children now. Okay? So they start to have children.
Okay.
Piki and Kele had 2 children.
Okay.
Taufuri Fonua and Havea Lolo Fonua. Then Atungaki and Maimoa Longona had a daughter, Velelahi.
They all had incest, Yeah, for that matter, yeah.
Fonua Uta and Fonua Vai had a daughter, Velesi'i. 3rd twins. Now, Hemoana and the 4th set of twins did not have children. So it was just the first 3 twins. Their children are important because those twins, there's only one son out of those 3 twins. Taufuri Fonua is the only male. The rest had daughters.
Okay.
But then Taufuri Fonua,
Lucy came out from
Piki and Kele.
from WA. Because...
and he had a sister, Havea Lolo Fonua.
That's right, yeah.
They had a child. Taufuri Fonua and Havea Lolo Fonua had a son, Hikuleo. That's where Hikuleo comes from.
Yeah, Havea Hikuleo.
Yeah. So Havea Hikuleo comes from Taufuri Fonua and Havea Lolo Fonua, and his grandparents, Piki and Kele. So this is Piki and Kele's grandson, Taufuri Fonua, That makes it, I guess, a little bit easier for us to remember because they are, as you said, Siwa, there's incest happening here all the way through the creation myths. And any creation that we talk about, there is incest because there's no other way or people around. Yes.
Okay, so some versions they told that Piki and Kele were the first offspring of the rock.
So I'm thinking, Sio, that makes sense to me, because we have the rock and all of a sudden we have the twins, so I reckon that maybe the rock produced these twins. Where did they come from?
And,
We have to ask, where did these 4 sets of twins come from?
And another interesting thing that I think Professor Hufana Professor Mahina talked about because he analyzed this creation myth in his PhD thesis, and he was trying to bring into account the meanings of their names, because the meanings of their name reflect nature and reflect the how, if we put it this way, how they started Tongan society or whatever society in those days.
Of course.
Because the names are very like Piki and Kere. For Mahina, he said that Piki, Kere, the soil was floating. Can you continue, Lucy, again, because I'll just try to see who's to turn this off. Of home is calling.
So what Siwa was saying is that Mahina's thesis reflects, some conversation about how the names, what the relevance of the names are to the creation myth, like Piki and Kele, I guess Siwa was going to come through and tell us about what he means by, what does he think about Piki and Kele? What does that reflect?
For Mahina, Kele, he believed it reflects how the island was created.
Okay.
Kele, floating from somewhere, pieces of soils and rubbish. Kele is mud, so it's mud. So Kele floating, and then Piki means stick to something. So that's what he meant. The whole story, the whole names reflects how the island was created or society was created. Because we go from Piki and Kele, he didn't analyze the whole, their all the names, but I would like to continue by saying Tau Furi for Noah. Tau Furi for Noah. Tau is to reach. Furi is a kind of journey to a Fonua, because all the names reflect Fonua. So Tau, there was this expedition or journey, and then reached the Fonua. That's how we have the name. It can be the meaning of the name Tau Furi Fonua, and the rest to Fonua Vai, island of water, Fonua Ota, and so forth and so on.
It like any myths, like any legend, there's lots of meaning hidden in those names, and it's for each one to take whatever that means, it makes sense, that things float and then they stick together and then they form an island, In our islands of Tonga, islands are formed by volcano, exploding into the air and then forming islands, new islands. Or there are things that maybe in the beginning, all these bits of rock and that were floating around, then they stuck together. Some earth, wherever that came from, stuck together. Plants started to grow on those islands. Birds appeared, so, it absolutely makes sense that these people or these names reflect, like Vico said, it reflects the stories of the day. Whatever happened on the day is reflected on these myths and legends that we're looking at today. So, of course, scholars will have all different, explanations and analyzing whatever the names mean, and we have to all look at that and you decide what you want to decide, But when you look at the names, of course, Piki and Kele, Ma imoa longona, vele lahi, vele si. All these things, whanua uta, whanua vai, they are quite important. So what do you think, Siwa, about some of the, like we have the main gods now. We've come down to the main gods,
I would like Lucy to add how many generations, I think it's 3, before we reach the gods and the goddess.
Okay, we have the first generation of parents. We have the second generation. And we have the third generation, which is the grandchildren. The grandchildren of who are the gods. So the grandchildren now are the gods, the main gods,
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting. So, the nature was there in our creation, in this story. Nature was there first, and the spiritual world, which was Pulotu, and then we have the sea. So nature was there first.
What do you mean by nature, Siwa? The land, you
the
mean?
The spiritual world and the sea and everything, the rock, they are nature, part of nature, So what I meant here, the gods didn't come first.
No.
The gods didn't come first. Nature came first. Nature was there before the gods. So the gods were Tangaloa, Hikuleo, and Maui. They were products of nature and humans. First twins began together and so forth. They have this intermarriage among themselves, gave birth to the gods. Very interesting. In the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, nature came first as well. Because God's creation started with nature before Eve and Adam were created.
I think in the Bible they said God created.
That's what I meant. In the Bible, Genesis, nature started first. But the difference is God created nature. In our case, nature was there, and nature and humans, plus humans, created the gods and goddess. So it's the reverse. It's interesting. With the Genesis, God created nature and human. In our case, nature with human created the gods.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So when you look at the divisions, if we go back to looking at the division of creation where Tangaloa, Maui, and Hikuleo divided up creation, they each took whatever. Hikuleo took Pulotu, Tangaloa the heavens, the skies, Maui took the underworld, and then, as I said before, the twins, the fourth set of twins, Hemoana and Lupe, they appear now, and Hemoana takes over the sea. So he looks over the sea. So he becomes a god of the sea, and then Lupe becomes a god of the land after all that stuff. So I guess now, with the Mauis coming through, the Tangaloas coming through now, Hikuleo coming through now, there's a readiness now to find the land, to create the lands now.
That's right.
So I guess
we have the 3 worlds. So Langi, Mama, Earth, and the afterlife, or the blood. And then came later on this Lolofonua under the world, which was said to belong to Maui Motua. So it's an addition. It appears to be a later development of Fonua concept. But you mentioned Lucy before. Lupe and her Moana, they didn't have children. Did you mention that?
That's right.
Lupe and her Moana.
They just appear at the end of these. They come in to the grandchildren who have just decided to divide up, the job of looking after the sky and the underworld, and of course they come in and they have a job. Whoever gave them that job, they had the job. So he Moana took over the looking after of the sea, and Lupe looking after the land. So I guess it's what we see here is a division of, there is a division of labour here. They're not just coming up and doing nothing. We're looking also at maybe looking at the community and the division of labour. There are people to do this. There are people who look after this, and this is what in the beginning in our history is. There is a division of who does what, and how important that job is. No one does anything that's more important than the other. It's just important that there are people that have the responsibility of looking after a certain thing.
So firstly we had the division of lands or worlds, different worlds, and then comes the application, all goes together with the Fatonia. And we have these Tongan phrases, they Vahe Fonua, Anahi Otua, the allocation of lands by the gods. So it was begun by Maui, Tangaloa, and Havea Hikuleo, and then Lupe and Lupe was a simple or was a dao, and her Moana was an eel.
A sea snake.
A sea snake, sorry, an eel. So
He Moana.
So it reflects also Moana and land, sea and land. And we have, Lucy, Fonua Vai and Fonua Uta. Interestingly, the names. So it reflects also what were so important those days is were the ocean and the land. Fonua Vai, sea, Fonua Vai, land and sea or land and water, and Fonua Uta. So Fonua Vai belongs to Fonua, and Uta belongs to Fonua, and also the sky, the space.
When you look at the names, it's as you said, they're oppositions. Piki and Kele, Atongaki and Maimo Longona, Fonua Uta, Fonua Vai. But those opposites beget children. They had their children, and even their names, Velelahi, Velesi'i, Taufuri Fonua, Havea Lola Fonua. Those names, also reflect, as Mahina talked about, they reflect the community and the setting of the community.
Nature and
nature, lands.
When was started. Yes. That's what he was trying to understand.
Yes.
Because he was following Biko. Biko believes that myths, as you mentioned, reflect society, or myths wrap up how society was started. And then we just look to the myths outside, but we have to unwrap slowly and dig in to know the details, the contents of the myth. The myth that we, or the myths that we are experiencing, they are the form, they are the outside appearance, but we have to dig in. That's what Biko believes, and Mahina used Biko as one of the main theoretical works in his PhD thesis, following Professor Putaelu. Putaelu was the one who first suggested Biko for Mahina, and we follow later on accordingly. Lucy?
because it is an interesting conversation and a dialogue to keep having. There'll always be discussions on our myths and legends. There will always be discussions on what they mean, on how and whose analysis is right. I think it's just all of those stories, all of the analysis, all of the discussions are all extremely important, because that makes us think about what this story may mean or might mean. And everything is, because someone would say, well, how do we know it's true? It's not about how do we know it's true, because we know that the past is real. We know that history is real. We know that stories that talk about the past is real. So it's not about, talanoa loi or what talanoa mooni, right and wrong. It's about us looking at our myths. It's about us talking to our children about our myths. These are our stories from before. We have our own story. However way it comes out, whether Hikule was male or female, I don't think that's the point. The point is that there was a god, Hikuleo, of Pulotu. That is the important thing. That Maui looked after the underworld, that's important. That Tangaloa looked after the sky. And these names and these myths are shared all through Polynesia.
Yeah, the Tangaloa was believed, the sky, what they had found out. When we talk about gender, the gender of the gods and gender of people, I think they are important because it reflects a lot of things. They are important because when we understand, if we like Hikuleo, we see Hikuleo sometimes appear as a male, sometimes appear as a female. In the case of a female, it reflects a lot of things, and we know more about our past through the female side of Hikuleo. So when we look at them, we look at the form of their existence. And then we go from there to the details, the contents of the existence. Then we start to know how important the details, if they are male or female. Like for example, Tangaloa, Mahina referred to him, the first Tangaloa, the Tangaloa Eiki or Tangaloa Langi for the Samoan, referred to him as the Ulumotua, the head of this whole creation. In terms of talking about the gods, and then Mahina referred to Hikuleo because for him Hikuleo was a female, was a goddess. She was the first whāhu in Mahina's terms. So that's what I meant. It's important when we talk about gender because it reflects the whāhu. He believed the whāhu system was started by Hikuleo in its female side. But the other thing, Lucy, the Samoan, they believed Tangaloa was the Tangaloa and the Tangaloa were resided there. That's their residence.
In where?
In Samoa.
Oh, okay.
The Samoan believed the Samoan land was the residence of the Tangaloa. Most of the. So we can say maybe that's the division of, that's where Langi, because we refer to Tangaloa and the Samoan later on, people believe in their studies that sky was Samoa. Even in Tonga we also have Langi, different areas in Tonga. The Tongans refer to locally as Langi, but Langi now it's like Samoa, probably, or maybe it was Samoa. So Pulotu now, Mahina and Futa and them believe, as we follow in that pathway, Pulotu probably, or maybe, or Pulotu was Fiji and the Melanesian Islands. And then Earth, Mahama, was us, was Tonga and some of the closest islands to us like Futuna and Uvea and them. But continue, Lucy, please. Yeah.
Well, that talk about maybe Tangaloa came from Samoa or was his residence, that makes sense to me in a way, because when you look at the Samoans, there's a lot of names that they use Tangaloa a lot, and like you said, you're not just looking at the outside wrapping of a story. When you start to look within and you dig in a little bit more, you will find out now why is Tangaloa used so widely in Samoa. There's a reason. Maybe that's where it originated. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and Lucy, the father of our first Tuita-Nakao Eitu was Tangaloa Eitu Matupua, according to our myth, came from Langi, from the sky.
There you go.
And according to the Samoans, Tangaloa Eitu Matupua was one of the children or grandchildren of Tangaloa Langi, of the first Tangaloa.
That makes great sense to me.
Yeah.
When you start to look at it like that, when you start to dig in and to unravel, those things become relevant in a way, And when you think about Hikuleo in Fiji being a very important place, of course I could imagine that would be the reference that Hikuleo, she will be residing there in Fiji or in Pulotu. And all these places, when you think about it, Siwa, Samoa or where Tangaloa is extremely important, her story and her history. Fiji or Pulotu, extremely important, her stories and our relationship with these two countries is extremely important.
And I think Lucy mentioned something about the other parts, two other parts of the creation. We can come back to that on our next program, and also we can come and look at the many Tangaloas. Several of the Tangaloas came out from Tangaloa Eiki and Oalangi, and the grandchildren of Maui. And Havea Hikuleo was Havea Hikuleo and Pulotu in our myths were regarded as taboo. They are the sacred place, and Havea Hikuleo, there was no descendants of Havea Hikuleo throughout the ages. All we heard about Havea Hikuleo was like exist for many centuries, because every century or every different years, every century, Tongans talk about Havea Hikuleo throughout. It appears to be, it sounds like Havea Hikuleo was only one person existing throughout the ages.
But I was thinking, Siwa, that to us Fiji was really, really important. We look at Fiji and the Ha'awhalewhisi as Eiki, So I'm wondering whether maybe, because we talk about Havea Hikuleo being the whahu. This is where the whahu lives in Fiji. And we also have our very high-ranking Eiki from Fiji too, in our history.
Yeah, we can see that the repetition of the sacredness of Fiji throughout our history. Because from Havea Hikuleo the first, and as you correctly mentioned, Lucy, there was this intermarriage. Why? One reason, to bring in the achiness, the sacredness, the taboo of Fiji to our society. Why? Because it was, or they were descendants of Havea Hikuleo, or they were people of Pulotu, the sacred place, the taboo, the place of the whahu, of the first whahu in Mahina's terms. I think Lucy, our time, excuse me. We passed time now. It's finished.
Well, it is time. It is time too. That's very timely, Siwa, because we have reached the end of our discussion, and it's a very important discussion because we're going from the very beginning to these twins that live on the rock, and now, as Siwa said, the other story is that the rock produced these twins. They didn't just appear. They were, it was a product of this rock. Doia Futuna, these four sets of twins, and they had these children. And then the grandchildren now we're talking about, extremely important. Tangalo from, the god of the Langi. And then we have Hikule, or god of Pulotu, or goddess of Pulotu. And then we have Maui, who took over the underworld.
Yeah.
So there you go. I'm sure you won't forget all these stories about these people, and this is about the beginning of time, when there was nothing else. That is why they had to procreate amongst themselves, or incest, It had to happen because there was nowhere else. So I think as time went on and there's more and more people, then that sort of, changed a little bit to not,
And we finally, thank you, Lucy. I think at the end most of us, or all of us in the Pacific Islands, we came out from these goals and this genealogy that we have shared with you. Malo Abito, thank you, Lucy, for preparing this program, and we will continue with our Tongan myths and Tongan and world myths, or Tongan, Moanan and world myths.
I think we'll be going on to the fishing up of the islands.
Yeah, and the genealogy, very interesting, is amazing.
Absolutely.
When we start to look into the details of this whole scenario. Thank you for joining in, and for comments and future comment. You feel free to share our program, and just put in your questions and comments, and we'll try to answer them on Facebook, and we'll pass on this program to YouTube as well. Malo Abito, thank you for coming. Malo mumea mai kamumea.